You guys are the leaders of tomorrow. You are the church leaders of tomorrow. In fact, your experience in the next couple of weeks, by the time you wrap this up experience, you will actually be far more qualified to be leaders in your church than the vast majority of people that are going to your church. You'll have known more about the Bible. You'll have been wrestling with bigger questions than they've had to wrestle with. So let me just give you an example. For the time, if you were here from the very first semester, okay, by the time we're done, you will have spent 714 hours studying the Bible. Okay? To get that equivalent at church, if you just go to church and you're not even getting a full hour, you maybe getting a half hour sitting in church. But if you were the typical Christian who, they might read a little bit here or there, pick up something here or there, but they're not really digging into anything. Maybe they do. Let's just say the average Christian goes to church and or a Bible study once a week is their normal, typical thing, which is probably fair to say. It would take them 13 years to get what you guys have got in these past 9 months. Okay, so you see how equipped you actually are, and you're not only are you equipped, but now you're responsible, because you're not given a gift of understanding, of knowledge, of depth, of wisdom, just for you. It's given to you to do something with, and a lot of that's going to have to do with being in some kind of Christian community. Now, some of you guys might end up on a mission field. Well, guess what? The mission field, you start having, if you're any way successful, you start having church situations on the mission field. Most of you will be in a home church somewhere, and hopefully many of you will be in some form of leadership in that church. And you will have the right to speak into some very hard things that churches oftentimes shoot themselves in the foot in, and hopefully give them some guidance. And so 1 Timothy is actually really helpful for you because it's very controversial, as we've been seeing. And it's not always easy. In fact, in this room, while we've been doing 1 Timothy, there's been disagreements, okay? We had people walk away with totally different opinions about certain things. Welcome to the church, okay? And how you navigate some of that stuff, how you decide which are hills to die on and which ones you can give ground, will determine how effective you're really going to be in the church. And many churches, they die on hills they ought never die on, and they avoid hills that they should. So we're going to continue in 1 Timothy. Here we go. Elders who do their work well should be respected and paid well, especially those who work hard at both preaching and teaching. For the scripture says, you must not muzzle the ox to keep it from eating as it treads out grain. And in another place, those who work deserve their pay. And that deserve their pay actually literally means double honor. Okay, that they deserve double honor. In some of your translations, it'll say that. We're going to pick up this next one later, but I'll read it for now. Do not listen to an accusation against an elder unless it's confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Those who sin should be reprimanded in front of the whole church. This will serve as a strong warning to others. All right, so we're going to start with this first thing. Should a leader be expected to be paid? If you are going to be a church leader, should you expect to be paid? Why or why not?
Yes, because you need to eat.
Okay. Should you just expect to be paid? What if your wife's working and she makes tons of bucks? Should you expect to be paid? Do we need to go back to the scripture?
Yes.
Okay, you say yes? Okay. Should if you're independently wealthy, you've inherited a bunch of money, and you go to church, should you expect to be paid? If you're independently wealthy and they ask you to be a pastor of a church, you made a bunch of money on the stock market or illegal drugs when you were non-Christian or wherever it came from, but you're independently wealthy. Should you expect to be paid? As a church leader, should you expect to be paid?
Yes. Yeah, so
okay.
You can choose for yourself what you want to do with that pay, but I think the church shouldn't make the decision, you already have money, so we're not going to pay you. Okay. They should be paying you, and then you can make the decision, okay, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to give it back to the church, whatever you want to do.
All right? So in every situation, should you expect to be paid? Or are there some situations where you should not expect to be paid?
If you're starting a church and there's no income.
Okay. How can you be paid by with no income, right? So,
I mean, I think this is somewhere in the Bible, but like with new church leaders, I don't know, like if they should be expected to be paid. Like some could be coming to the church just to make money. Like if you went to a mega church or something, then maybe they should start more like in a non-paid position to see, just to test their leadership or to test their if they're genuine.
if you had a wife and family, would you be willing to do that?
Probably not.
Okay. Probably because your wife would say you're going to do what? That's a really interesting thing because paychecks, the ability to sustain yourself and your family are what we expect when we work, right? And Paul's mapping out, he says, this is with people that are involved in preaching and teaching, you need to do something for them. Okay? You need to take care of them. But Paul worked hard as a tent maker. And should he have been paid instead of having to work and minister? Is he saying this, kind of looking in the rearview mirror and going, oh man, I was busting my butt making tents?
So I just had a thought, somewhat addressing this, but also a little bit what we just talked about before. I think the payment can come in different forms. And I think that's something that we can discern like stage life. So kind of like what Nick was saying with like an internship almost, like if it's like, is this gonna fit or not? I think that's a stage of life thing where like, if one of us, if a church is like, hey, we want to take you on to mentor, to be a teacher and be in that, and we're gonna house you and we're gonna feed you, and that's like, there's different forms of payment. So I think if Nick doesn't have a family right now and that's something he can do and still survive and serve the Lord and be paid that way, I think that's good. So I think it kind of depends on the stage of life, because obviously with family and kids, you got to get physically paid to go to support them.
Okay, so here we go. So now, you guys in your little church groups, okay? And you guys sit in the back, you need to join a church group. Not these guys, but got only 2 in this church group and 3 in this one, and 2 in this one. So join one of these. I want your church group to determine where you live. Pick out one of your cities that you live in, not Hawaii, but one of the cities you live in. Determine what you think would be the proper salary for a church leader. All right? Okay, ready, set, go. Doesn't matter how big of a church, just the price. Unless you want to make that as a contingent. If it's got 10,000 people, then it ought to be this. You could do a sliding scale. Okay, take 1 more minute. 1 more minute. Okay, all right. So what I need to know is I need to know the area, the city or state, city, and the more or less agreed on range of salary. Okay? All right. So we'll just start with you guys.
We live in Canada.
Canada and
In Prosper. How much that?
Between 35 to 45,000.
a year, 45,000 a year would be tops. Okay. U.S. or Canadian dollars. So what is that? That's like, what's American for that? A little bit more, like 50,000 or something. Quite like 60,000 American. Okay. All right. Pardon? Oh, it's 33 here. Okay. So yeah. So you're looking more like 60,000 probably. You guys.
We did Pennsylvania, and because it's pretty cheap to live there, and I'm really familiar with that, like financially. And it was we're doing like church somewhat KCF size, so pretty sustainable, good giving, pretty big-ish congregation. We were saying about like between 50 and 60K a year is
Okay.
each is what we were thinking.
Okay. You guys?
We were doing California,
Uh-huh.
Southern California,
Southern California. Okay.
and we know that like it's a bigger congregation, so we chose 40,000.
Okay. 40,000. Okay. If you're not in Newport Beach, obviously. Okay. Yeah. You guys?
Colorado and California, and we said between like 50 and 60,000, just because like the cost of living is super expensive in both of the states.
Okay. You guys?
We did our church back home. It's a mega church. It has like probably 3,000 people per service or something like that. And so, and then housing expensive. It's in EP, which is a more expensive town. So what did you guys want to do?
What do you say?
Sam said 40. I think it should be more than 40 because of living. And so I would say like 60 or 70, especially. And it also talks about how hard they're working. So you can differ how much you're paying depending on the work that they're actually putting into their messages. And how much
Okay.
they're-
That's another whole subject that we may get around to, but yeah. Okay.
But I would say 60 or 70.
Okay.
We did Colorado because it's expensive there, and we went on the higher end. I've seen firsthand, like 50,000 was not enough for my dad to support our family, so we did between like 70 and 80,000.
Okay. You guys?
We picked California and he says 40. I'm thinking it probably needs to be more, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. So with the and again, you guys don't have families. You know, you're not renting homes for yourself or anything like that. So you're stabbing in the dark about what it really costs to live. But a good rule of thumb that a lot of people use is they try to find out what the average person in their church is making, and they try to shoot for that. Other churches do it like if the more people you have, the more money that the pastor gets, right? Some of them will do it by the degrees and the different things that they have. And the more qualifications you have, the higher you can go up the ladder. But the main thing is that the scriptures tell us that we ought to be taking care of the people who that's their primary job. And the reason we're taking care of them is because if you're spending your time teaching, studying, discipling, doing all the kind of work that needs to go on in the church that we've been looking at in the past with all the different issues and stuff like that, it's pretty hard to work a regular job and still have a family that's honorable and all that kind of stuff. So the idea is to free it up. And it's interesting that the technical word that they use is double honor, because a lot of people look at it and say, well, then if the average salary here of the worker is 50 grand, a pastor ought to get 100 grand. Okay? And I've seen churches try to do that. They get voted down real quick by their board, but there's people that kind of think that way. Paul here, and I think we'll see this, he's talking to people that are creating a church environment. When he was a tent maker, the reason he didn't really ask for money, because he was church planting. So who's going to give you a salary when you're church planting? You're on the mission field, and you're either bivocational, you're working a job. A lot of times church planting now is done, you get a job teaching English as a second language in some other country, but you're using that as a way to meet people and to evangelize. And so Paul says, in Thessalonians, you surely remember, brothers and sisters, our toil and hardship. We worked hard day and night in order not to be a burden on anyone while we preach the gospel to you. So that was part of his missionary work in Thessalonica, and he wasn't expecting a salary. Now Paul's talking to Timothy about a church that's been founded, and he's laying out the rules for how it operates, and part of that rule is compensation obviously where it's possible for those that are teaching. But the compensation doesn't necessarily have to be in money. So how would you define double honor in today's world? If you're going to double honor, say, the pastor of your church, so you're part of the church leadership now. You're going through the book of 1 Timothy. You stumble upon this idea of double honor. You decide, come up with some ideas of what double honor means and how it would look. Okay? If this is what we're told to do, which it is, what does it look like? Okay, ready, set, go. You're still in your church group, so. Twofold is double honor, right? It could be part of it, but I don't think it's the central thing. Yeah. Work on something else, though. We're going to go to that, but work on something. How would you double honor a pastor in your church? What could that look like besides money? Okay, all right, so this is out of the box time. I'm trying to get you to think out of the box, okay? If we're not talking about money, well, double his salary then, And by the way, churches would rather keep a pastor humble by giving him a low salary than double his salary, so, And by the way, when you look at the church, how they've imagined what this looks like through history has been very, very interesting. If you can think of the Catholic Church and you've seen pictures of the Archbishop, what's he wearing? Mitre, right? And he's got a certain kind of robe, and he's got certain kinds of stoles that come across. Those were, from ancient times, all of those were symbols of authority and power. And so their idea of double honor, as you go up the ladder ecclesiastically in those churches, you get more cool stuff to wear, and that means you have more authority. You got more guys, trying to kiss your ring and stuff like that. That's how they interpreted some of this stuff, but they viewed it strictly through the lens of their culture, because that's what powerful rich people got, and so they translated it into the church. Obviously, in Protestant churches, we don't do that. It's residue left over in the Catholic Church. They didn't even realize where that came from. But the concept of leaders, and some of you guys will be in that, hopefully many of you will be in some kind of leadership form of the church. And that church body is instructed to give you double honor. And as you go in as young adults into these churches, you could go in with some really great ideas on how we might do that to people who have been serving faithfully and well and coming close to burning themselves out, doing ministry with people, because people can really wear the heck out of you, you know. So what are some ideas? What does double honor? Anything that you could come up with? Yeah.
I think from a lead pastor role, sometimes it's cool that it can be like, sometimes there's churches own houses sometimes, and they let their staff stay in the house for free outside of their wages and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's housing can be cool.
All right.
I think a big part of it is honestly just like respect and that kind of honor. Like, how is a preacher or a teacher going to lead if they don't have respect among the congregation?
Sure.
So if they get like double honor, like double respect, it would be easier for them to lead those people.
So you put down your phone when he's talking, even if he's boring.
Something like that.
Something like that. Like you guys don't do here. Right? Just kidding. Not really. Not really. But I mean, it is some kind of, showing a respect for the person for their work and effort. Sometimes sitting through stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want to sit through, that doesn't really float your boat. So that's one way. Any other ways, practical ways?
Besides their salary, like just doing random acts of kindness toward your pastor's family. Like if they need something extra, if they need encouragement, whatever it is, if they're ministering to the church, but the church always has the opportunity to minister to the family.
Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get something to write down with, because I want you to go home with this tool. Okay? Something on your computer, right on your arm, whatever it is. Because I want you to appear to be the fount of great ideas and how to honor the leadership. Okay? All right? So we're going to start coming up with some ideas of what we might be able to do that would show not preference, not blowing smoke towards leaders, but actually just saying thank you in some kind of tangible way to a church leader. Now, I'll start you out. Find people that are willing to watch their kids so they can go have a night out. Okay? And they don't have to pay the babysitter. Just somebody's going to watch their kid, either a babysitter, or they drop the kids off here, pick them up tomorrow, so you guys can go, have a night out. Okay? See where this is going? You start popping out ideas. I got a ton of them, but I'd rather you. What else could you do that would be tangible, that would be honoring to them? Think simple. Yeah. Bringing dinner, preparing a meal for them. There's a gal in our church that I like lemon meringue pie. My wife cannot cook. She tries to make lemon meringue pie, but it's lemon meringue disaster. But she makes other good stuff, but she just doesn't do pies. But she makes lemon meringue pies and brings them just for me, and I don't share them with anybody. No, I do. But, wow, what a cool thing to do. So write down lemon meringue pies, okay? Yeah.
My grandma and grandpa had this guy in the church who was a handyman, and they would come by and fix stuff at their house for free all the time. And,
Okay.
Fix the AC or the dryer or whatever, and he would never charge them.
Okay.
It was a real blessing.
All right. So, you find somebody who's a handyman, and they do fix-ups, okay? Yeah.
Pay for them to go away.
Okay, go behind their back, get a bunch of money so that they can have a little mini vacation someplace, or a maxi vacation. Depends on the size of your church. Okay?
That's not what I meant, okay?
But that's, go away. You're out of here. Come on, let's get some more ideas. I mean, the reason I want you to have this ideas is because what I'd like you to do is when you go home and you get settled and you're in your church and stuff, and you begin to look at the people that poured into you. Okay, maybe it was your youth pastor. Maybe it was a college person. Maybe it's a pastor you've known forever. Maybe it's a worship leader that helped develop you or is helping develop you. I'd like you to look down this list and go, you know what? I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna get a couple other people. I want to make this happen to honor this person. Yeah.
Little holiday gifts.
Okay.
Something just it doesn't
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I feel like it helps to know, like being aware of what actually, what is the way they receive love from their congregation. You know, if they're into gifts, giving them a gift. If they're into time, if they're into like.
Yeah, you don't always know that, but
You don't
you can
always
you can pretty much guarantee if they have children, taking those off their hands is one. If they've got a car, okay, they just say, could you pull your car out, please? And a bunch of people show up with buckets and rags and vacuums and clean their car, and they didn't even ask for it. You know, now put yourself in their position for a second. You're not expecting it. It's just people from your church trying to honor your work. And it's not, your church is poor. They don't have a bunch of money. They can't give you a big gift. But which do you think would be more valuable to them? You know, that kind of stuff would be really valuable to them. They would, you know, they become really, whoa, I can't believe it, you know. And it works both ways. You know, the people doing it really enjoy it as well. Okay? Okay, hospitality.
Especially, like, and maybe, I don't know, Sundays are a hard day, so maybe providing lunch on Sundays for them. Because
Okay.
it's their day that they're busy.
All right. Some other ideas? Yeah. Mow their lawn, okay? Weed or whatever it is, you know? Yeah.
Would like writing them a note or like telling them like that they've impacted your life.
So let me ask you this. You lead worship. If somebody wrote you a note saying, you know what, I really enjoyed it when you led worship last Sunday. You know, your contribution, da-da-da-da-da-da. How would you feel? Yeah.
I would say that,
Yeah. And it's one thing that we don't do enough of that kind of stuff, you know? Just acknowledging when somebody has said something, done something, given you an idea, moved things further along the road, and just saying, hey, thank you for that. It really, really blessed me, you know? And you would be surprised how that inflates a leader's thing. Because think of the average, and some of you guys are going to be this guy. You're a guy on Sunday morning, and it's your job to get up and present a 30-minute message each week that's biblical, practical, interesting, funny, memorable, you know, and completely different than what you did last week and the week before and the week before that, right? All new material. You probably heard this joke before, you know, but all new material. That's a rugged job. And most pastors they're basically judged on their ability to do that very thing, right? He's a nice guy, but he's a lousy speaker, you know. And he might be a grumpy guy, but he's a great speaker, and people go, ooh, what a great speaker that guy is. But they don't know, none of those guys, rarely do people come up to those people and say, you know, that thought was revolutionary to me. And to be one of those kind of people that just come up and either verbally or in a written way acknowledge when something turned on the light bulb for you is super helpful. By the way, you're going to get a chance to do that because just before we wrap up the school, we're going to be giving you all note cards and the names and addresses of all the speakers that we've had. And we're going to encourage you to pick whichever one or two or five, but not all of them. But just, you know, pick, because I'm paying for the postage and I'm cheap, that's why. But pick a few and you write them a note letting them know, because trust me, they leave here and they don't know whether they wasted your time or not. They don't know whether they connected you. They have sort of an idea by your response and stuff, but a lot of them don't actually know how penetrating some of the things that they said, and maybe even life-changing, some of the things that they said or did for you were. And you'll have a chance to do that for them. And I guarantee that within about 5 days of those things going in the post office, there'll be smiling faces all over the nation, you know?
Maybe 2 weeks. I have postcards.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, it is the postal service. Okay. So, can you think of any more ideas? You see where this is going? Yeah, go ahead. What?
Bring coffee.
Bring them coffee. Yeah, a donut, you know? What the heck? And And or even just, you know what would be, it's interesting, you know how pastors always invite you out to dinner, out to coffee? Remember how, you know how our speakers invite a lot of you guys out to coffee? Did you ever thought inviting them out? Now I know you guys don't have any funds, but when you get funds, invite one of them out. Hey, I'd like to invite you out to coffee. And I don't want to talk church. I just want to get to know you. Yeah.
We used to do a thing where like we would have just like every couple of months, you know, here and there, we do like worship nights, and we just have like a hangout, and like we just make food, and like we just invite the whole team, and like all the volunteers and everything too, and we just like have just like a hangout, like night of prayer, like worship, and then we just like spend time in fellowship together, and it was just really like beneficial for like the team.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do for a team. So this is what double honor means. And you've started a list. Get together, when you go back, get together with some other people and think about a person and start maybe adding to that list. But you get where that list is going. We always tend to think of double honor in the terms of finances, but it doesn't have to be that, okay? By the way, do you think Paul intended to make a clergy class within the church? I don't think he did.
What do you mean?
A clergy class, that these people are set aside as somebody special as opposed to everybody else. So there is like when I go to the hospital, not so much anymore, but we used to when I go to the hospital, they actually had clergy parking. You know, woo, you know, those were the days. And even to this day, I can get into places you can't in a hospital by going, I'm their pastor. Oh, okay. But they used to have clergy. For a long time, the clergy was a class, right? And of course, in church history, clergy was a distinct class. But do you think Paul ever intended it for going like that? I don't think so either. Now we do have different responsibilities, as we're going to see, and different results if we screw up those responsibilities. But we're not supposed to be an entitled class. If you're clergy, if you're pastoral thing, you are one of the congregation that's using your giftings in a certain kind of way. And it doesn't mean you're elevated over other people. All right. So we already did this one. And we did that one too? Okay. Now we're going to move into the one, because this is a tough one, but it's interesting. Do not listen to an accusation against an elder unless it's confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Okay? Those who sin should be reprimanded in front of the whole church. This will serve as a strong warning to others. Have any of you ever been in a church where the pastor was reprimanded in front of everybody? Okay, how did that go? Tell me something.
So they said that he wasn't giving as like a leader. He was like one of the founders of the church at all. And so they basically presented him in the front and like kind of explained that he's going to have to step down.
He wasn't giving financially, or he wasn't?
Yeah, financially, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're tracking his giving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. How did he take it?
He left the church.
Ah, okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Yeah.
We had a youth pastor having relations with the youth, and he was not there when they did this, but they had talked to him already, and then he actually got arrested. But
Usually that happens when you're,
yeah. But they did talk about it in front of the whole congregation, and they showed a picture of him to like make sure everyone knew who he was, and then it was like all over the news and everything. And
heavy, isn't it? That's heavy.
had to talk about it because it was so important. So
Right.
I don't really.
Right.
That's all I have to.
Right. Anybody else? Yeah.
Our pastor had committed adultery with one of the ladies in the church, and so we knew he was asked to like leave for a while, and we didn't really know why for a long time, and then the whole church had a meeting, and the whole staff was like, "We're sorry we didn't catch this sooner," but he has been asked to leave. Both of them have been asked to leave because of the situation, and so.
Yeah. Anybody else have that happen to him? Yeah.
Our kind of same thing as Trisha, but our
It's the kind of church service you don't want to invite any of your friends to. Hey, let's go to church. It's going to be really wonderful today. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah, I had a pastor who, he was branching out, and he was like kind of like a church startup, but it'd been a while, like 2 years, and had an affair on his wife. And then the church met, and they said this is the last time they're meeting because they didn't have another pastor, and so the church ended up shutting down for that.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a pastor who was molested his child, and he's gonna serve a really long time. And they said that he's no longer with the church because he'll be in jail for a really long time, but they're gonna support him and the family.
Did he stand up? Did any of you guys actually get up in front of the church? Your guy did.
Yeah, I had two. One of them was similar to what Kate was saying, a youth pastor on the sexual sin with one of the teenagers, but it was more on an emotional level, so it wasn't like legality as much, but it was enough that he had to step down. He came in front of the church and kind of said that he was stepping down. He owned his sin and stepped out of it and tried to do a little bit of healing process through that just to the congregation. And then there was another situation in a different church that the pastor claimed to be military, and then it was shown that he wasn't military. It was false valor. And he actually was up on stage and he was like, "Yeah, I sinned, but I'm still going to be the pastor, so you can stay if you want or leave if you want."
Oh, okay. Yeah, I imagine, because he wasn't being reprimanded. He was.
Well, he got reprimanded, but it was like they were like, "We're reprimanding him," but and it was crazy. It was in the news. Like it went really big because he had to pay like thousands of dollars worth of fines, and it got pretty crazy. And he was reprimanded in front of the church, but then the church said, "But we're still going to keep him as lead pastor." And it was like,
yeah, that blew that church apart. So this is the tough part about what Paul is saying. He's going, you got these guys in leadership, you're giving them double honor. You've got the list of requirements we've looked at in the past. But if somebody blows it, they got to own it. And they got to own it in front of everybody. And they got to be reprimanded in front of everybody. Because they've taken on the mantle of a leader. And now they have to have the responsibility of a leader. And that's a tough thing to do. Most guys in that situation, they disappear. They don't want to have to stand up and confess it. And I give guys credit who will actually stand up and go, "I screwed up. I'm not worthy to be a leader," and step down from that. Okay? So it's a real strong warning. Why should any accusation against a leader be confirmed by other sources? Yeah.
False accusation.
Yeah. Believe it or not, there are people who would love nothing more than tear down some respected leader. Okay? Every great evangelist guy I know, like Billy, I don't know Billy Graham, but everybody I know of, like Billy Graham, guys like that, when they travel, they protect themselves. They never travel with females other than their wife. They've got, like one guy I know had somebody call him every time he was on the road. He'd call him and go, "Are you alone? Are you alone?" And he'd call him in his hotel room, "Are you alone?" And to try to keep guys accountable, because there's all kinds of stuff out there that people and things that want to drag people down. So what are some good ground rules for helping a leader avoid false accusations? Yeah.
Knowing the opposite sex of them.
Okay.
Just good boundaries in general.
Okay, good boundaries in general. And that's something you guys as young leaders need to have too. Because the minute you begin to show leadership, whether you're declaring it, whether it's declared upon you, the minute you take that upon yourself, there are going to be people looking for the chinks in your armor. And the evil one's going to be looking for those too and try to exploit those. And so you have to build basically a wall of protection around you so that you can't be accused by people of anything funky. Yeah.
I'd say in general, avoiding one-on-ones as much as you can, because I've had some leaders say something
With the opposite sex.
Just in general.
Well, I mean, that's pretty hard to do. A couple boys going surfing, that's a one-on-one,
Well, I mean, with counseling, just being really careful. I've just had leaders say really sketchy stuff to me, and I didn't really know how to react, even to women.
Yeah.
So it's just I don't really know how to help that, but
Yeah, I don't know how to help that one either.
it's just
But again, if somebody accuses somebody, they're having a one-on-one, counseling with somebody of the same gender, and somebody accuses of something, we're not to entertain that unless it's coming from other sources too. Yeah.
I would say just being above reproach in all other areas of your life, so that way if you are accused, then they can look at the rest of your life and like, this doesn't really line up.
Right. So here's the classic ones. I've said this before, but these you should memorize this. If any kind of leadership, don't touch the money, don't touch the women. If you can figure out what that is, or men, and don't touch the glory. I know you should. Okay, every pastor ought to be wearing that right there. Anybody in leadership, that's what they ought to be wearing. But you get what this means, and those are the ones that usually take guys down. One of those three things: they touch the money, they touch the opposite sex, or they touch the glory. In other words, they're all about themselves, and those will take people down really fast. And God's preparing you guys for leadership in a local church, and it's wonderful and crazy cool in certain ways, and it's also makes you shoulder a lot of responsibilities that maybe you would not normally want. Frankly, it's a lot easier to be a guy sitting in the church pew or church chair with a scorecard on Sunday morning. Well, the worship team was an 8 this morning, and the pastor was a 5.6 this morning, and I've heard that joke a million times. It's easier for us to sit in that position and go, why don't they do more of this? I liked it better when we did it this way, than it is to be the person in leadership whose job it is to help move the gospel ball down the field in a real meaningful and significant way. And that's what Paul's trying to get us with, to help us understand that it's really a cool thing. We ought to honor those people that are doing it because there's a lot on their shoulders. And at the same time, we have to expect that some people aren't going to be able to pull it off. And when they blow it, we got to have them face up to it too. Any questions, any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah. Is that verse specifically for leaders?
Yeah. It's specifically pointing leaders. Yeah. I don't think the Bible says to confess your sins one to another. Okay. But it doesn't say to get up in front of the whole church and say, I stole a Snicker bar. That's not necessarily what we're required to do. But for leaders, because they are in front.
Well, I'm not a Snicker bar, but what if you were in the same, like they're in the same scenario of adultery or whatnot? Is it just private?
No, I don't know that it's private, but it's not something you drag them up. Now, there can be situations, like we had a person that was a children's leader. They weren't paid or anything, but they're a volunteer children's leader that fell into adultery. And, we asked her to stand up and talk about it, and she wouldn't. She took off. Ironically, 5 years later, I think I mentioned the story to you, but 5 years later, so she came and said, I want to stand up and ask forgiveness for everybody. And that was a super cool healing type thing, but it took her 5 years. Yeah. So it depends on the position of authority that they have in the church. Stuff like that. All right, let's take a break.